I'm your cult boyfriend. Today we are talking about season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's my favorite season of one of my favorite shows. Um, I could go on and on about this season, but I'm going to limit myself to talking about what I find to be the most interesting about season 3, and that's faith. So this entire analysis is going to be about faith. If that's something that you're not into, go away. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about really anything else other than faith. Because I think that by analyzing faith, we really get like a full idea of the philosophy of um Buffy's third season. Faith, 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 five by five, faith, 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 faith. Okay, we get it. All right. So I always call this season Faith, and I think it's one of the greatest pieces of media ever. I think it's one of the best seasons of television ever. I'm stunned by its structure, especially of Faith. She's one of the best villains I've ever seen in my entire life, and the process of getting to her villainy, of her total corruption, um, is such patient but exciting one. Like we spend a lot of time with Faith, even after she kills Alan, which is like the big moment, the big turning bad moment. She still has a few episodes in her that are with hope. Actually, I always have faith in Faith, even in the last possible moments, even in that battle with Buffy outside of her penthouse apartment suite. I still have faith in hope for rehabilitation, for a positive change. I always have faith in the character, and I think that's mostly due to Eliza Dushku's pitch perfect, iconic performance as Faith Lane. When Buffy says, "You don't get it, Faith. You killed a man." And Faith responds, "No, you don't get it. I don't care." That's the most haunting and heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. It gives me chills. It disturbs me. Eh, breaks my heart in a thousand fucking pieces. The character of Faith interests you if you are drawn to kind of bad girl archetypes. If you want to know more about Faith, I highly recommend getting yourself a copy of Go Ask Malice, like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer novel. It's really good, actually. I recommend this, to be clear. Faith is a troubled girl on a dark path. She's a slayer. She's a bad slayer. We all know she is, right? Let's get into what she really means. I think there are a couple different ways to view faith. Um, we can view faith as a sort of postmodern wrecking ball, as a tool coming in, well, as a weapon, honestly, coming into challenge the social hierarchy, the narrative structure of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in season 3. I think a really fascinating way to view faith is as faith itself, as the concept. Because Buffy the Vampire Slayer is an existentialist show, and it's a show where nihilism is the scariest possible thing. I believe that Joss Whedon considers nihilism a true threat and possibly like an inescapable one in a large way. I think that he believes that nihilism is vampiric, is demonic, and I believe that he believes correctly that nihilism um, is the most abusive thing that all young adults and teenagers have to experience and have to battle through, or fall to, or succumb to. I believe that Joss Whedon correctly, and I would agree with his worldview on this, that nihilism targets teenagers, especially troubled ones, conflicted ones, which are most teenagers. I believe that he thinks that nihilism is invasive, that nihilism is perverse, and that nihilism is total. And I believe that Joss Whedon uses his big bads and especially just his vampires as these ranging from like mindless, like automaton, like uh, nihilistic hired guns to people like the mayor. or people like Angelus or Drusilla, Spike the Master, as these nihilists who actually see the end goal of nihilism, which is total annihilation of the soul, of the world, or complete ascension into something of a god. If I live in a godless world and God is dead, then I can become God if everything is meaningless. I think it's interesting to view faith as like the hyper personification of faith, as the embodiment of faith post Nietzsche. Post Nietzsche. I think that faith is a Nietzschean dream girl in the sense that faith doesn't just die with God, right? God is dead and we have killed him, fine. But all of those different attributes that built the symbol of God up in our brains philosophically, those things are still there. Faith is still there. But faith in a world without God, in a world where God is dead, faith is kind of neglected, disturbed, abused, troubled, aggressive, impassioned. So many different passions, but no useful place to put them. Faith, Lahane, I think, is the hyper personification of faith itself. And the mayor is nihilism incarnate. The mayor is all the perverted, nihilistic qualities given a form and ascending that form into one of a true satanic creature. I believe that Joss Whedon sees nihilism as satanic. For a lack of a better word, or maybe that's the best word for it. The mayor is a satanic embodiment of nihilism at its most powerful, and nihilism at its most powerful is sanitized. Nihilism at its most powerful is palatable. The mayor is someone who is like scared to death of germs. His last words are like, "Well, gosh, well, golly," and he sees faith, and it's about manipulating faith. It's about sanitizing faith. It's about trying to care for faith, but you're caring about faith for satanic means and satanic goals. It's positively heartbreaking watching Faith, this young girl who I like to view as the hyper personification of faith itself, um, being completely misunderstood and taken for granted, like by all of her friends. And I mean, she's left out of their fun little reindeer games. She's never really invited. She's an afterthought. People don't really understand her, and she is kind of a defensive person. But Faith is defensive because of how many faithless people there are now. Because of how offensive people are to her. Because of all the fucking abuse she's been through, and like the hard fucking times in South Boston. Like Faith has been through a lot. Faith itself, the concept Faith, has been through so much that Faith is losing faith. It's about Faith losing faith in itself until she meets someone like the mayor who not only fulfills like God is dead, and if God is our omnipotent father and we've lost our omnipotent father, Faith is someone who never truly had a father. She had an alcoholic, like a drug addicted, basically non-existent or at least passively abusive mother, and her father was never there, father being God conceptually. And now she has the mayor. The mayor can fulfill the role of God. And God is the father of faith, or at least the surrogate father of faith, at least the mentor of faith. So conceptually, this all works like so fucking gorgeously, especially when you see their dynamic. It's not just the mayor just using her and manipulating her into being like his assassin or a right hand man. It's not just about that. He dresses her up in these bright colors. He buys her a beautiful, like exquisitely furnished, really cool fucking loft, a beautiful apartment in Sunnydale with a PlayStation. He treats her like his daughter, and she sees him like a father figure, like an actual father, just like Faith sees the concept of God, like the concept of Faith looking up to the concept of God. Just when Faith itself as a concept thought that God itself as a concept was dead, she finds a new one. Because faith and God, these concepts are dead in the postmodern world, doesn't mean that their symbolic value has been erased from the human condition. Like we still need those things. Like those things are still alive in our culture, and they can be perverted by nihilism quite easily, just like we see here. Faith, the ultimate corruption of the concept of faith. She accidentally kills Alan because in the moment she is ferocious, in the moment she is even hypersexualized. But that's of all crusades. Faith is one of the most impassioned things you can possibly feel. Faith itself is an irrational feeling. It's completely insane. To actually have faith in something means that you believe in something regardless of fact, regardless of objective reality. To actually have faith means to be deliberately insane within the moment that you're constantly carrying within you. So faith itself, like she's just doing what faith does. She's just acting out the concept of faith in a world that is troubled, in a world that is damaging and damaged. And I think that the structure is kind of beautiful because that happens around episodes 14 and 15. And that's kind of back in season two. It has the same kind of weight as Angel snapping Miss Calendar's neck. And they happen almost at the same exact time. It would be episode 17 in season two, where Angel kills Miss Calendar and completely like turns to the dark side, like you can't save this person at all anymore. And when Faith accidentally shoves a stake through Alan, the deputy mayor's heart, that happens around the same time structurally. So we're seeing the formula that Joss Whedon has worked out being perfected here, perfected and transcended. So we understand now how I view faith conceptually. I view faith as the hyper personification of faith. Like I got her name branded on my body for a reason, because I think that faith is, as a concept, is something that can't die. But as a concept in our lived in worlds, faith is something that has been so abused, and faith is just a troubled kind of feeling now. Because it's been through so much, because faith still exists rebelliously in a godless world that continues to reject her at every opportunity. Like, that's how I view faith in the show. That's how I view faith in real life, like, conceptually, the very concept of faith itself. So, we've gone over what faith means to the mayor, and that's a very complicated kind of subject because there's so many amazing parts where Eliza's doing these acting things of like acting things. I believe they actually call that acting, your cold boyfriend. She does so many wonderful kind of nuanced things with her performance where she says something and then she hesitates for a moment because she doesn't know how the mayor will react, and I think she's scared to death of rejection, of that kind of like patriarchal rejection, considering that she had been rejected from the Watcher Council, which is kind of patriarchy personified, and she's already been rejected by that. And like her new Watcher Wesley is not only like a creepy creeper, he's also entirely incompetent and deliberately doesn't understand anything that she's going through, and she doesn't want to be let down by another kind of like paternal figure in her life. So she like says something and then wants to see what he'll say, and he'll go, "Oh, you're a real firecracker, aren't you? You know, I bet all the boys will be lining up to see you." And it makes her feel good. It makes her feel cared for. It gives her something that she never had before in her life. She tells this story about a quarry, saying that like when she was, this is right before she has the big fight with Buffy. This is the last conversation she has with the mayor. She tells the mayor about how when she was a kid, all there was this quarry, and they would all jump off rocks and cliffs and stuff into the body of water, and she would jump off the very top one, and she was the only one who wasn't scared, the only one. And that's as far as that story goes, and she says it to kind of impress, the mayor. And the acting from Eliza Dushku in that scene is extraordinarily heartbreaking, considering that the fight with Buffy, the fight to the death with Buffy, ends with her being stabbed and standing up on the ledge of that giant apartment building and jumping off into the back of a moving vehicle. Like, if that's not kind of rhyming imagery, like her jumping off the quarry is the same thing as her jumping off of that apartment building, out of her penthouse, out of her apartment building, stabbed to death. She has been training for death her entire life, and I think that's true of the concept of faith. The very idea of faith is that it can be lost, and faith is constantly in preparation to die. Faith, this girl has been practicing her own death, her own self-destructive qualities. She's been practicing them ever since she was a child. and it started with the quarry. And that's the beauty of Joss Whedon's writing too. Like thinking of that kind of rhyming vocabulary of images and themes, it kind of breaks my heart. She's been training to die ever since she was a kid, long before she was called to be a slayer. And that quarry is symbolic of her own suicide drive, honestly. What is the concept of faith in a world that believes that God is dead? The concept of faith is on a suicide drive. I love you, Faith. What Faith could represent to Buffy are those darker edges. You can kind of maybe view it uh like she's fighting like the darker qualities of her archetype, like her in the worst way possible, like all the bad parts of her, all of the more primitive parts of her can be embodied within Faith. But I think that that's almost a boring way to view it. It is a legitimate way to view the dynamic between Buffy and Faith, but the more interesting way, of course, is the way that it is actually structured, and it's structured like a romance. It's structured like girl meets girl, girl gets girl, girl loses girl, girl kills girl, girl kisses girl at the hospital. It's structured like a romance. I mean, you can't watch an episode like Bad Girls, which is my favorite episode of Buffy, and it's not even close. It's a perfect episode. You can't watch an episode like Bad Girls or Enemies and not think that there is some not just sexual tension, but impassioned, romantic, kind of like legendary and iconic love story right there. Because it is structured like a love story. It is structured like a romance. And Joss Whedon actually wanted them to kiss on the lips. In the episode Enemies, when they have like the knives to each other's throats, and they're staring at each other, and Faith leans over and kisses her on the forehead and runs away. Originally, Faith was supposed to kiss Buffy on the mouth, like kiss her as a lover would, but the censors said no. Censors were extremely homophobic back then. I mean, I don't think Joss got in a gay kiss until the body, and he kind of I think that's how he snuck it in there between Willow and Tara because it was such a heavy episode anyway, and that's one moment of warmth within that episode. But they definitely said no for the Faith kiss. But there is something extremely romantic and passionate there, and I think it's because we have to look at it both ways, right? I think they're both heartbroken by the unalterable qualities of each other. And I'm going to view Faith conceptually again. I'm going to go between Faith conceptually and Faith as a character in the show. Buffy, after season 2, has lost her faith. She's lost all of her faith, and she's slowly regaining it here um, by coming into contact with Faith, and Faith being this thing that excites her, Faith being this thing that triggers her passions, Faith being that this girl that Buffy not only needs, but Faith obviously needs Buffy. Faith needs someone to believe in her. Without someone believing in Faith, Faith as a concept dies. Faith as a character is loathsome. Faith needs someone to believe in her. And Buffy believes in Faith, and that gives Faith not only a feeling of validation, like she feels like a valid girl, but I think a feeling of romantic interest, of friendship, of warmth and want, of desire, of purpose. Right, because if it's a nihilistic universe, you find your purpose however which way you do, you find your purpose. And Faith's purpose was Buffy because Buffy believed in her. Faith's purpose is belief, and that's the one person who believed in her for even if it was just for a few episodes. And over the course of the season, Buffy has to put down Faith because Faith was corrupted by the mayor. Faith was corrupted by um, nihilism incarnate, annihilation incarnate, annihilation in movement, annihilation itself. The mayor, who I think is a political figure on purpose because politics corrupt everything that it seeks out to sanitize and co opt. Faith is one of those things that every politician goes after. Every politician abuses and corrupts and projects their corruption of faith for everyone to see. And I think there's a large part of this story where Buffy and Giles and Xander and Willow and all of them, they failed Faith in a very large way. Faith was a girl who needed a lot of help. She was unstable. She was troubled, but she wasn't hopeless. Rewatching the season, you see all of these times where she's left out or they simply don't understand her, and often it seems that they deliberately don't understand Faith. They don't reach out when there was still time left to actually reach out with any sort of effect. You can see Faith, she wears her feelings on her sleeve. You can tell immediately when she's feeling hurt, and she's feeling hurt almost all of the time. Faith is self-hating. Faith hates herself more than anything else on this planet. Faith wants to die more than anything else on this planet. I can't stop thinking about her story, about the quarry, and about the way that she jumps off of that building. She's been training to kill herself forever. Self-destructive methods work. They sure do. And Faith, the concept and the character, are self-destructive things, just spiraling endlessly until its climax. Faith does become like psychosexually obsessed with Buffy, um, to the point where Faith is psychotic. So like Faith doesn't know exactly how to handle things. When she feels rejected by Buffy, the person who she wanted to believe in her, like when Buffy loses faith in Faith, Faith loses her mind and starts to kind of become her distorted double. She tries to seduce Angel. She tries to humiliate and torture, emotionally and physically torture, Buffy because she is psychotic. Because the world has driven her to such a deeply psychotic state. No one needs faith anymore. No one trusts faith anymore. The concept, the character, it is all just so powerful. And I'm so impressed by Joss Whedon and all of the writers and Eliza Dushku so much. Eliza was extraordinary. Oh my God. This is such like a fascinating concept to use because the analysis could be endless. There's so every dynamic that she has with every single character branches out into 1,000 different kinds of discussions about how people interact with faith. The concept of faith, how people interact with it. It branches out into 1,000 different polarizing conversations, all from this one troubled bad girl. And that's why I love Faith so much. I think this season is perfectly written television and incredibly well structured. It's the best season of Buffy by a landslide. It's perfect. Like there really isn't a flaw here. And I'm so impressed by it. I'm dazzled by it. I'm in awe of it. Season 3 of Buffy is just so perfect it makes me want to cry. Because when you watch it, you too are interacting with the concept of faith. And you too, I hope, are incredibly sympathetic to this girl just kicking and screaming on her suicide drive. Kicking and screaming on her suicide drive. What an incredible girl. What's the greatest wrecking ball that you could introduce into any postmodern show? The concept of faith. That's the one concept that could dismantle everything. Ah, God, I love that character so much. Eliza, you are a goddess. This role, you were born to play it. Um, Faith hits me so deeply because like it's just so immense. I think and multifaceted. Without ever losing its viscera, like it's palpable qualities. Like this is like This is like a really hot and really, really badass girl. While at the same time, she is the hyper personification of so much more, and something even more delicate than that, the idea, the concept of faith in a godless, nihilistic universe. In a godless, nihilistic universe, faith hates itself, and faith itself wants to die. And faith gets that wish. I've long considered the fight between Buffy and Faith, that final one, to be one of the most engaging action scenes I've ever seen. It's beautiful, it's perfect. The emotion is heightened. The hits really feel like they land, and it's really fast, and it's not too flashy. It's not overdone. It's just hitting, kicking, chained. It's everything. Being stabbed with the gift. Like that's the whole thing. That fucking jackal knife is so cool. Like as a concept, like like the way that she looks at that present that the mayor gives her, the gift of the jackal knife. She probably hasn't gotten too many fucking gifts in her life. She could probably count on one hand the amount of gifts that she's received. And she's probably received none from a father figure. So that knife meant so much to her. So much to her. I think she saw it as like the object of the mayor's affection for her, like as what it was intended to represent. And her being stabbed with it because it was it was her corruption that killed her. It was the mayor's affection that killed her. And she was stabbed by the mayor's affection weaponized and objectified in this really badass looking dagger knife and shoved into her stomach. Like that's how she goes out. Of course, she doesn't actually die, right? She goes into a coma, and we get this like really enigmatic dream sequence where Buffy fans have they've been decoding the dream sequence ever since it aired. She says something like Miss Moffat counting down from 730, which I think is supposed to represent the amount of days before Buffy herself dies. And there's also like a little foreshadowing to Dawn as a concept being introduced later on. Um, which is fine with me. Like I don't think that's like some stroke of genius, but I do think it helps to support my reading of Faith as the hyper personification, as the actual living embodiment of Faith itself, because Faith has these kinds of I mean, faith is a metaphysical concept, and she was definitely speaking outside of the meta narrative, within the meta narrative itself, and speaking knowingly of things that no one could possibly figure out, and they still can't figure it out. I do have faith that faith is being kind of all knowing in that scene, for sure. I think season three is such a phenomenal season. I think it's beautiful. I'm sorry that I haven't talked about literally any other character, but when I think of this season, all I think about is Faith. That's it. That's it. No other part of the season interests me more, and I also think that every other part of the season is in service of exploring the concept of faith. Everything about it is leading back to this character. Um, so I'm really not interested in analyzing anything else because I think that blurs the main goal of this season, which is to explore and kind of redeem the concept of faith, punish the concept of faith, but also redeem it. Like I don't think that Joss Whedon is terribly kind to the characters that he creates in his works, but with Faith, he is certainly sympathetic. I think that the writers liked Faith, and I think it shows. I know that every young girl who watched this season, I've seen it's basically meme where they Faith turned a whole generation gay or at least bi. That's quite an accomplishment, but watching Eliza in this season, it's absolutely no question why. I buy it. I believe it totally. Eliza was something else. She was a phenom. She was incredible. Perfect in every single way. But I think that's where I'm gonna cut it off. Faith is such a beautiful character, a miraculous one that that makes me actually want to have faith in faith itself. And you don't know how extraordinary that is. That's an extraordinary accomplishment. That's all.